prosperity, and legacy. Eugene is nationally known as the man with the $50 billion plan for successfully creating and leading a campaign at New York Life Insurance Company. That generated $50 billion of financial protection and future income for Black communities. You will hear more about that today. For 17 years, Eugene served as the corporate vice president and African American marketing manager at New York Life, responsible for the company's national recruiting, sales, and marketing campaigns within the African American community. He also oversaw and supported the development, retention, and promotion of 1,500 plus African American market agents and 40 plus African American managers. Eugene has been featured in national media and industry publications, including the New York Times, ABC News, and Black Enterprise magazine. He earned his MBA from New York University's Stern School of Business and his BA in finance from Florida International University. He and his family live in New York City. Fun fact, Eugene has scuba dived, skydived, and hang glided in 5 different countries. Without further ado, please give a warm welcome to Eugene Mitchell.
Good morning. Good morning. Good morning. Good morning. Family, it's an honor and pleasure to be with you. How are y'all feeling? How was that presentation this morning? Are y'all fired up? This is my first time to Black Wall Street. To let you know, I am so touched with emotion right now. Right? From pride to see all of this, from the energy and excitement from that presentation this morning, and just from the energy that I'm feeling from you. So thank you for staying on. Thank you for being a part of this. Right? Before we get going, right? If you could indulge me, I'm going to say you all are looking great, but I want to know, how are you all feeling this morning? Good. Feeling good? All right. I'm going to ask you to indulge me with a call and response. So when I say how you all feeling, I would love for you all to reply back strong. All right? Because here's where I'm going. I believe that we have to be strong, mentally, physically, spiritually, and emotionally, for the work that we need to do to close the racial wealth gap and to change the financial future of Black America. You guys with me on that? Yeah. So let me ask you, how y'all feeling? Oh, love it. One more time. How y'all feeling? All right. I want to say thank you for that wonderful introduction. I want to thank Melvin for the invitation to be here, and the Black Chamber. And I want to thank each and every one of you for being a part. The words I want to bring to you, I think, are a continuation of what we had earlier. Right? I think of that as sort of the inspiration, right? The motivation. Pastor talked about he's going to be providing and supplying information. The conversation this afternoon is about activation, right? What do you do now, right? To impart things for your family, to put the pieces in place, be it from the estate planning attorney, who's my good friend Shannon, from your will and your trust, right? If it's your mortgages, if you're purchasing property, if it's about your investments, the conversations that we're going to have today are about empowering now the message that we had, putting it into action, right? So I want to say I love the opportunity to get connected. It was a line I heard that Dr. King used to use. He said, we're not so much divided as we are disconnected in the Black community. Okay? Not so much divided as we are disconnected. So this is about connecting with these experts to bring their expertise, their experience, and their areas of specialty, right? We talked today about beyond financial literacy. I love Pastor's mention of wealth literacy. I just took some of the notes down. I'm just trying to feed off of where he was steering us. Wealth literacy, making sure that we're applying these things to our families to keep it going. See, I believe that we're agents of change, right? We're called on a bigger mission to be here. And with the social justice movement that's been going on for the last 2.5 years, right? And the void that's been exposed from Floyd, right? We don't seem to mention his name very often these days, which is a real shame. Right? The void that was exposed by the death of George Floyd in our country around systemic racism, right? And racial bias out there. I think that we don't only have to think about pushing companies and governments to make change, but it's about what we're going to be doing for ourselves, right? To enlighten and empower ourselves and our families, and to support each other to be successful. So that's what this conversation is going to be about today. And so my area of specialty, and it came up several times, is in this area of life insurance. Right? We talk about you gotta have a little bit, you gotta have a little bit there, but there's so much more to it. I believe that, from what I'm gonna share with you is different from what Atlanta Life was doing. Right? And it's different from what the large companies out there have been teaching us to do. There's a lot of misinformation by design and on purpose around this tool. And so I just want to get into what we've been missing and how others have been using it as one of these strategies this afternoon, in addition to what these other wonderful presenters are going to do, on how we can leverage this to create our own generational wealth for our children and our children's children, okay? All right, so let me give you a little bit more about my past. So the bio was great, you didn't need to read the whole thing. But where I talk about my pride and my passion for what I do, it came from the years that I spent 4 years actually down in a prison in Miami, Florida in my early 20s. Okay, let me clarify. If you would, I was a prison guard in Miami for 4 years. Okay, but here's where I'm going. As I looked at the majority Black and brown inmate population, right, and I started to wonder, why is it this way in this country that we are so overpopulated in the Black and brown community? That the issues that we claim are the things that get us there. The crime, the drugs, single-parent households, are those really the reasons or symptoms of a deeper rooted problem, which has to do with our economics, about our lack of money, guidance, support, and direction? See, I started to wonder, if those young brothers had been given a college savings plan when they were young, right? Would they have had a different path in life? If somebody had given them down payment for a home, right? Would they have had a different level of pride and purpose? If somebody had given them startup capital for their own business, would they have not been out there hustling, right? And I totally believe that was the case, right? But I know I couldn't do much about it as a prison guard. Yes. Okay, you got it. All right. And so I knew I wanted to do something about it, so I went back to finish my degree. I dabbled at community college, played around for a while, but now I had a purpose, right? I wanted to figure out how to bring financial literacy and messaging to create wealth in the Black community, to at least put these Black children on a different path than what they've been having, right? So I went back and worked full-time for 2.5 years. I went to school for 2.5 years to get my undergraduate degree. And then I applied to come up to NYU to do my MBA, okay? Before I get going into how I fell into the life insurance industry and what I was able to see, I want to ask Mr. Bill Allen, would you come up and say a few words? It's really an honor and a pleasure to be here, to be in your home, to share your vision of what needs to be reconstructed back in our communities around the country. And this is an amazing model for doing that. So thank you for all that you do and all that you are. Thank you for being here.
Good morning, everyone. Well, let me say that it's certainly a pleasure to see all of you. If you were in the earlier meeting, you heard that I have a mission to increase the number on this side of minority and women-owned businesses throughout the United States and globally. And I feel honored to have that mission because I have truly been blessed as an entrepreneur and a businessman. When I first started in business in the early 70s, I was going to say I started in the daycare business, but I actually started in the real estate business. So you've heard ideas of different ways of accumulation of wealth. I'm one of those people who are a great believer in ownership of real estate. Okay, so my first venture was right out of college. I took a class to learn how to be a landlord. I didn't know what a landlord was at the time. But being raised in the church and being raised, actually born on a plantation that was 14,000 acres. I remember the song, I Know the Lord, He owns the cattle on 10,000 hills. And I remember that saying to myself, well, Mr. R.A. Pickens, which was the white guy that owned all the land, he owns a lot of land. And in church they say, I know the Lord. So it sounds like two good things I ought to learn how to be. So I took a class to learn how to be a landlord. What is the point that I'm making here? For many of you sitting here, you're here learning and you are exposing yourself. We are products of our environment, our exposure, our experiences, as well as our DNA. So it takes all of this. You know, I was active member of, back then, we didn't have the Black Chamber of Commerce, but we had the Booker T. Washington Business Association in Detroit. Actually got started in 1930, and I became a member of that. And eventually, in the 80s, I became president of that association. So let me just say this to you. As beginning entrepreneurs, as seasoned entrepreneurs, as advanced entrepreneurs, keep pressing your way forward. You have no idea what you are destined to do. I will close by saying, having been in business 25 plus years, my wife and I were burned out, and we thought it was time for us to retire to Florida. We lived a good life. You know, we had built what people would consider a mansion. It was 12,000 square foot on 2 acres with its own pond, and we had a garden and enclosed swimming pool. But we were ready to retire to Florida. But I was still wondering at that point in time, if I retire, how am I going to keep up this lifestyle? Because I had not made enough money to sustain the lifestyle. Little did I know that, and that was some 20 odd years ago, it was only the beginning of my career. You see, at that time, I had started in the daycare business and had expanded to 14 locations in metropolitan Detroit. And I'll tell you something that happened. We had an opportunity to start in a new industry at that time called charter schools. I didn't know what it was, didn't know what it looked like or anything, but I thought I would take a chance of 2 years. And then I had two very interesting people, wealthy white guys, very, very wealthy, to fly in on that private plane. And they wanted to see what I was doing. I'm like, well, wait a minute here. Why are you coming to see my mom? I got upset and I got mad and I got tired. And so the end result was that I got busy to see what else was in store for my career. And here we were, some 20 years, 15 years or so later. We had 30 locations in 22 cities, in 7 states across the United States. And that little piece of 8-family unit real estate had turned into 1.5 million square feet of commercial real estate throughout the United States. So when you see the new Black Wall Street here, this is my dream, my give back to meet that mission of increasing the number and size of minority women-owned businesses. Someone has to take a chance, an opportunity, and put their money and their commitment. Not just the money, but I spend a lot of time here rather than in retirement. So I'm wishing each one of you the greatest and the best success. And don't assume that where you are now is where you're going to be 15, 20 years from now. So be encouraged, persevere, work hard, and your dreams will come true. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Just a candle in the dark, right? Giving us the examples. Can we give him another round of applause? The proof that it can be done. And really, this is sort of the message of the conversation that I'm trying to bring as well, and giving us light and direction and how we can accomplish the goals that we have. Pastor said we have to have a wealth goal. So this is, what are the pieces of the puzzle that we can put together to help us get there? So I was saying that, I came up to New York to go to school. I interned out in California at one of the tech companies. right? And it was in 2001 when the tech bubble burst. So I knew when I was going to get a real job, I was going to go back there. And a friend told me, to, why don't you go work in one of those old stodgy life insurance companies that's not going to be affected by the market, and then you can sit there and move when the recession passes. So this I didn't realize was going to be a calling on my life. And that, while I was there, I would get to see, peer behind the curtain of what others have been doing and the things that we've been missing. The one thing that started this path for me, I was asked to do an analysis of this cultural marketing group they had at the time. They were making targeted outreach and sponsorship, right? Putting ads and recruiting folks from the Chinese, Vietnamese, Korean, Hispanic, and Indian markets. I said, this is great, right? The ads that you're putting in is creating all this excitement, this relationship, the pride of the agents. What are you doing targeted and specific for the Black community in the same way? To which the company says, oh, there were two answers that I got. The first one was, we just use the general market materials, i.e. the white brochures, right? And I said, could this really be the case in 2001? We don't see the value of tailoring materials, speaking specifically, if you go to Black churches, right? Black businesses, Black homes, Black families, to at least put a face on that, let alone connecting with who we are. And they said, well, that's just what we're using now. And then some other folks called me aside to say, well, maybe there's more to the story. And here's where I'm going in sort of the center, right? They said, well, it's a belief around here. And some folks have gone to great lengths to prove it out, that the Black folks don't want to buy life insurance. And what you buy are those small burial type policies, right? The ones that we've known that Big Mama had, right? 50 years ago. And what do we know of those policies? They typically weren't enough to bury her, right? We had to beg and borrow to bury to keep it going, right? And on what we see in these commercials, right? In the way of the $20,000 policy from, say, Colonial Penn. And they say, the old couple come home and say, if anything happened to me, will I be okay? And they say, oh yeah, I got that $20,000 policy. That's what we've been shown. That's what we would, associated with buying. We did talk about that we helped create that to be the image and the way in our community to keep us doing that. But where they were going is that because those policies are small, because they lapse, and because the agents who sell them don't make it into business, we've decided it's a negative return on investment to even put money into supporting the Black agents and the Black community. So you can imagine, either way, we don't see the value in it, and we're purposely not doing it. It got me fired up. And so that's what, put me on this path to write the business plan for the African American market. And oh, by the way, back then they said, oh, we don't even know how many Black agents we have. So I got creative and went to HR and tried to figure out, and I found, well, we got 535 Black agents around here. Why is it that we're not supporting them in the same way that these other folks are being supported? But these other folks are no smarter than you. They're no harder working than you and I. It's just that they've been shown differently how to leverage these tools and strategies to create wealth for themselves and their families, right? To be set up when something happens and not set back. So that put me on the path to now rally these agents, figure out how we can tell a different story about this tool, show examples of how others have been using it, right? And then make in 2011 a campaign to say, if we can get 200,000 Black folks to see the value of owning at least a $250,000 life insurance policy, that will create 200,000 times 250,000, $50 billion of tax-free, because life insurance proceeds to pass tax-free, $50 billion of tax-free future income for the Black community. So thank you for that. So it took us 6.5 years. I'll tell you a little bit more about it in a minute, but I'm proud to say we crossed that milestone. There's over $1 billion been paid out, and we've created millionaire Black families since then. But there's more to what I want to pull back and explore about what we've been missing. So at least as you start for yourselves, as you start sharing with others, let's bring a different message about what this tool is and what it can be. And so what I'm bringing to you and sharing with you is building on a proven concept for financial stability, economic opportunity, and multi-generational wealth, right? Like I said, this is not what Atlanta like, because of where they came from. Just give them all credit. Mr. Herndon started the company in 1898, right? After 1898, one of the first companies out of slavery to help support and put Black folks in the ground. They were not, equipped enough to write larger face amount policies. So their focus in the era of attention was around burial, right? And so the success they had and all the companies that came after them, and especially in segregation, when nobody else was insuring Black folks. So this is part of the story, as folks talk about have the inheritance and or the proceeds of life insurance, right? That other communities have been able to do this for hundreds of years. But these other large white companies were not insuring black folks. And when they did start to insure, they overcharged people, especially from 1920 to 1948, right? So, and then they wouldn't start write large face amount policies till well into the 70s. And so what I'm saying is that, you know what, there's so much misinformation and lack of access that we've had over the years that have gotten us here, right? So this is what I'm sharing and wanting to bring more about. Let's go to the next one. So I put it into a book. I've got 25 copies, and I think there's another 25 being delivered to hand out. If you would, so I'm going to talk from 4, if you would, just bullets from the book. And this is from the learning of that $50 million campaign. Realizing what we've been missing and not taught, right? The first one is to know ourselves and to know our worth. Second, to insure ourselves to ensure the future. Number 6 down here, I'm gonna skip the others. You can't earn your way to wealth, right? If you have a landlord and a Lexus, then you have a problem. Just say it. Rule number 5, it's not what you make, it's what you keep. I think Pastor said that earlier. It's number 6, rich people plan for 3 generations, poor people plan for Saturday night. That's what Melvin asked me to come and share some of the examples and stories, especially from other communities, how they've been positioning these schools for 3 generations in ways that we've not been doing. And then lastly, a rising tide lifts all boats, right? So, like I said, just in sharing this awakening for me. Now, if you can imagine, there weren't many folks in the corporate headquarters, you know, trying to find out what we've been missing, trying to get this information. Right, to which the first thing that came out for me was that there's a value gap, a misunderstanding of why we need insurance, right? And so the first thing, even before we start talking about the product, I say before we start wealth building and legacy planning, we have to value and appreciate the largest asset that we have in our life, which is ourselves. They talk about building wealth with homes, right? You talk about participating in the stock market and having investments in the likes of businesses. Those are contributors to building wealth. But the greatest asset that we have is us, right? And so, you know, I had never thought about it as I was in this company and hearing how folks were talking differently, right? As a black man in America, nobody had talked about my value, my worth as a black man, right? Especially in this day and age that we're talking about Black Lives Matter. We're not talking about, you know, we need to go beyond just saying we matter, to say that we're valuable, right? We're equal. We have significance in the world, right? And we have to build upon that. Because not knowing your worth and your value, you might not be making the best decisions or having the highest expectations, right? So for me, back then, all I thought about my value, my worth, was about maybe the title I had on my job that represented who I was, right? And or what I could show, which I think a lot of that goes on in our community, right? The bags, the shoes, the clothes, all the name brand items that are trying to define who we are, but really that's not about who we are. It's about what we're doing to spend our money to look a certain way, right? So when the light bulb went on for me about this differing view of our value and our worth, if you would, the next slide, please, brother. I found out by accident at that company. See, I started off in this leadership development program. Right, and after 2 years, I graduated off this program. I was promoted to an assistant vice president, and I got a letter in the interoffice mail that said, "Congratulations on your promotion. As a newly appointed officer of the company, we want to take out a $2.5 million life insurance policy on your life to benefit the retirement fund of New York Life." I said, "For me?" They said, "No. So you can imagine as I'm looking at this letter, I'm saying, what is this about? Right? Fast. They called it. I said, what is this? They said it's common practice around here. I said, I've never heard it. Right? They said it's called corporate owned life insurance, COLI. They said banks do it. They call it bank owned life insurance. I said, no, maybe you've heard it, small businesses may do it in the way of key man policies, right? Or a church, a key man policy. If anything happens to the leader or the owner, then they can at least hire somebody else in. You can figure out how to transition the business. Well, that's what they're looking at you as a key employee. Right? And so, as you move up in the company, we're going to do things and earn more. We're going to take out investments on ourselves to help offset what we're paying you. I said, okay, I guess I get this concept of the key man policy. But tell me something, where does this $2.5 million come from? To which they say, that's what the company values you at. Again, I said, say what? They said, that's what the company says that you're worth to us for the work that you do. I said, I don't get it. Well, there's simple ways to calculate your value and your worth in their mind. One of the easiest ways was to do a current value of your future earnings. Here you are, 30 years old, making $100,000 a year. We expect you to work here at least another 25 years till 55 when you may want to put in for retirement. What's $100,000 a year for 25 years? $2.5 million. Without raises, without bonuses, without promotions, that's just the base of what we're gonna pay you. Don't you see that what you do, who you are, what you bring to us is worth that much? See, they were looking at me as a lump sum over the next 25 years, right? A way to look at our value, right? To which I said, no, I've never thought about it this way. You know, what do you mean? They said, what do you mean? Don't you have a $2.5 million life insurance policy on yourself? To which I said, no, right? And they said, what do you mean? You're married now, you've got small children. Don't you realize if you don't make it home tomorrow, that will be $2.5 million your family won't receive? What will your wife have to do? What will the children have to do? Will they have to move out of the house that you have them in? Right? Will they not get to go to the colleges that you have dreamed for them? Right? Will your wife have to go out and work 2 jobs or find somebody else to take care of her? Right? And then they said, well, what do you mean you've never thought about this? Continuing this whole conversation, right? Haven't you thought about where you're going to invest that $2.5 million over the next 25 years? Right? And so I became extra sad because I realized the company valued me more than I valued myself. You see, that's what I'm saying. But nobody had ever shown me and talked to me about this is the way to do this. If you would, here's what they were saying. Life value calculation. And this is what now I'm sharing with you because this is what I've shared with my children. Right? To say, you know what, as you all come out of school now, maybe 25 years old, making $75,000 a year. By the time you retire at 67, you'd have made $3.1 million. I want you to think about how valuable you are in being able to create that. Right? So we're not talking about, what you can show with the name brands. We're talking about what your contribution is to the world. If you're 40 years old, making $50,000 a year, that's $1.3 million that you're going to earn over the next 20 years. Do you see the value of this? One more time. See, calculating it this way, go back one. It talks about us being the value as a producer, as a contributor, and as a builder in life. And not continue to be looked at as a consumer, right? Way too many folks call us the greatest consumers in the world, right? Earning what we make to give it away, to look a certain way, to impress people that we don't care about. Right? You're talking about this. There are projections built on the Black community spending. We have to break that cycle. And where I'm going is that this is the mindset piece in the conversation. Right? How we can move out our own thinking and the thinking of our children to understand how valuable we are. Right? Then you can talk about this being the base of who we are and where we're going. Okay? So the next part is saying that we're all $1 million assets now. You make $50,000 a year for 20 years, that's $1 million. I'm looking at all of you as $1 million assets in the world. I'm going to challenge us now to think about how we would take care of any other $1 million asset that we have. Right? If you had $1 million car, think about how you take care of $1 million car. What's the first thing you would do? You'd insure it, right? Second, you'd have it in the garage, right? You have the alarm on it. When you go to the mall, you might park out in the middle of nowhere so nobody can touch it. You guys get where I'm going? How about if you had $1 million house? Same thing, what's the first thing you would do? Insure it, right? You'd have the burglar alarm or the pretty decorations, right? You might live in one of those communities with the guard at the front so your cousin can't come by unannounced, right? You guys get where I'm going? Right? How about $1 million racehorse? If you had a thoroughbred racehorse that you could put out each week and race and make money, right? What's the first thing you would do? Insure it. I'm gonna spin this one a little differently. Let me ask you, if you had $1 million racehorse, would you allow it to stay up late night smoking and drinking? No. Eating fried food. Not going to the vet or exercising on a regular basis. Do you see where I'm going here? We may take care of these other $1 million assets better and further than we do take care of ourselves because we don't think of ourselves that way. And is that by design? Right? That's what I'm talking about. Black Lives Matter. Oh, you just matter. Where I'm going with that conversation again, we just matter. So if another black man gets shot, if another one goes to jail, what does it matter? We've not tied in or associated any economic significance to that. You guys get where I'm going? So if George Floyd was making $50,000 a year, I was going to work another 20 years, that's $1 million they took away from his family. Do you see the level of significance that we can start talking about when you think of it this way? So not only taking care of your $1 million asset, I was going to talk about, the next level of thinking of this, right? Taking better care of our diets, our exercise, and our health checkups, right? Addressing our underlying conditions. It was COVID that put it out there, right? The things that we laughed about, we joked, I got the sugar, right? I got diabetes, I'm obesity, I'm a little overweight. All the things that we never paid attention to, COVID showed us and called them comorbidities. Those are the things that said you are higher likely and higher rates to pass away because you have these in conjunction with it. What do we have to do? We have to start taking care of that earlier and sooner on, right? I'm gonna say no reckless behavior. I'm $1 million asset. Let's not make some poor life decisions. One of the jokes I usually say is that, when I got on the bus in Brooklyn, I'm from New York, I flew out yesterday to be with you guys. I should have started off with some of that. We got thrown off earlier. But I got on the bus one day in Brooklyn, and this brother got on and he looked all irritated and agitated, like something was about to go down. And so what I did, I didn't take out the phone to start to record this. You know what I did? I slipped off the back of the bus because as $1 million asset, I've got too much to lose. So the level of thinking, the mindset of where we're going. We're not talking about money and investments yet, but this is about the things that we need to take on for ourselves. We're talking about being more selective on our life partner choices. So coming back to that $1 million racehorse, would you allow it to hang out and spend time and mate with the donkey down the block? Oh, see? You get where I'm going with this, right? So we got to be more selective on our partners and raise the expectations for our children and our family, and not the donkey down the block, right? Raise our community expectations. So now you start thinking about that, how much we're going to earn, how we can now to take that and redirect that into things that can, help us move to the next level and not give it away. It puts us on a whole nother trajectory. Rule number 2 here. Insure yourself to insure the future. I've already teed this up. I'm not talking about the policy the big mama had, right? I'm not talking about the colonial pen policy. I'm talking about doing something of significance, right? This is a tax-free, guaranteed investment tool that I believe by design has not been shown to us how we can truly leverage it, right? In the way of how I sat in that home office and looked at how these other communities were using it, but I started to think about, if I taught you how to leave $500,000, $1 million, $2 million, like other communities do, right? Maybe in the white family, daddy dies and they receive $1 million, mom gets to live off the interest in the bank, right? The daughter gets the big wedding paid for. They get the college education paid for, right? They get the down payments for homes. This is how it's set up. But I started to wonder, if we were to do that, would it, in this country, and what we talked about, some of the dynamics that we're trying to overcome and move beyond, does that mean that you might move out of your community, out of your neighborhood, and move into mine if you've got millions to go and spend? Does that mean that your children might be competing in the schools that my children go to? Applying for the same colleges, applying for the same jobs. So is it by design? I'm just saying, I'm putting it out there. This is some of the thoughts that went through my mind in trying to create this market and wondering why we've not been shown how to use this tool, right, differently than we have. There's a lot of folks have made a whole lot of money selling us burial policies where we stayed in the same predicament, same situation, same starting from scratch over and over because we didn't know to use it differently. You guys get where I'm going? Next one, if you would. So the first thing I want to think about is this pyramid of us. We talked about the activation round, right? What we're putting in place for ourselves, how we're starting to go along that journey of creating wealth. We got 4 stages: protecting what you have, planning, preserving, and passing it along. Down the bottom here, when I think about insurance, especially life insurance, I want us to think about not burial, but now protecting what you earn. We talked about that $50,000 a year for 20 years, right? Protect what you own. Protect what you owe, and protect those you love. That's the conversation I want to bring this to. First one, protecting your income piece again, right? When I was 30 years old, they said, you know what? You don't have to save all that money. You have to earn all that money. Over time, hopefully you will invest it and you'll have more. But if anything happens to you now, what is your family going to do? So the intention here is to make sure that we have a sizable policy while we're young, and also while we're healthy. The conversation I was having the other day is that, oh, you know what, we seem to get turned down more than everybody else, or we get charged more than everybody else. But if we're waiting till 50 to apply for it, when all those conditions have kicked in now, then maybe that's why it is so expensive. So I'm just bringing it back to say, while we're young, while we're coming out of school, while we're starting in our careers, you can take out possibly one of those term policies for $1 million. But make sure that it can be converted into a permanent policy later on. Because after 20 years, and then it expires, but most of us don't buy term and invest the difference, right? We don't invest the difference, so we don't create the wealth elsewhere. This is the way that if you can convert it, you can make sure that you continue on that conversation with the insurance piece. If you would, brother, one more. One more slide. So the first one, protecting your income. Just want to change that conversation. Second one will be provide future inheritance. We're starting to talk about it more in our community, that this word inheritance, it's not a jackpot or a lottery or something that we don't know, we don't get, right? I think my family, now we're the first ones to start to inherit something. So my wife's uncle bought a co-op in Brooklyn 40 years ago for I think $2,500, right? He stated he didn't have any kids. He, kept it up, kept it going. Now he passed away 4 years ago. It's worth $800,000 because he didn't have any children. He said he wanted to gift it to his favorite nieces and nephew. So that's my wife and her siblings. So they are going to be the first now to receive an inheritance. It's happening. We are the first generation to receive that. And that's the conversation you're going to hear earlier, a little later, about home ownership and how you can pass that, right? Investments you can pass on. Just, you could have had an $800,000 life insurance policy and done the same thing for those 4 children. You guys get where I'm going? So I want to introduce and start bringing into this conversation. It's not, so far away from us to talk about insurance. It is happening, and we should become more comfortable and familiar with it. Jay-Z in his album Legacy, 444, the song Legacy, it starts off with his daughter asking him, Daddy, what's a will? And he goes on to explain, well, this is how we protect our money and make sure that we set it up to be passed on into the Carter household and the Carter family, right? So it's hard to have these conversations done. So just one of the second use that I want you to think about changing this conversation is about how we can explore permanent insurance. When that other insurance expires at term, you're going to have something to pass on to the children. Okay? The example quickly I want to give you as moving this along is a young brother, a millennial, that we can look up to say, you know what, here's somebody who did this and did it right. And we can look to follow his example. So if you remember 2019, Nipsey Hussle was shot. You had all the articles, all the newspaper and TV coverage. Who did it and why? Right? They talked about his community activism. Talked about his music. They talked about his clothing line, right? His businesses. But I only saw 2 articles in that whole time that talked about Nipsey Hussle's $1 million life insurance policies, right? And so here's where I'm going to play this out. It was last year this article came out about his partner, Lauren London. Successful in her own right? But she was reported to have bought a $1.8 million home in Los Angeles, right? And the clothing line that he had started, Marathon, was picked up and continued by Puma, the sneaker brand. And so I ask you, if he had left her, like so many, we talked about all the celebrities that didn't have a will, that left folks broke, right? If he had left her trying to get money from the record companies, trying to get money from GoFundMe, all the things that we see happening, would she have been able to buy a $1.8 million home? Continue the business. You guys get where I'm going with this? See, what he did was provide for his family's home, the education, the retirement, and the business continuation. And his forward thinking around this too. He knows his children will do better because he set them up to be better. Okay? He didn't rely on anybody else. This is what he did. He didn't leave it to chance that this was just maybe going to happen. He knew at some point, sooner or later, because what do we know? We don't get out of life alive, right? He knew at some point, whether it was sooner or later, he's going to have something in place to pass on to his family. That's the second one. Just keeping the conversation going. This is what Melvin wanted me to share with you, some of these other ways that I went to folks to say, you know what are we missing? But when you think about these other communities, that the dentist, that just an average day worker has these $1 million homes, these beautiful places. It just, how does that happen? I think when you look at wealth in other communities, it is passed by inheritance, right? 70% of millionaires have received some type of major inheritance to get them there. So I want to talk about, let's plan for 3 generations, or rich people plan for 3 generations, while poor people plan for Saturday night. Let's work smarter as well as harder, right? So when they talked to me about my policy, which took me a while to buy, that $2.5 million, right? I said, well, what else is happening out there that I might be missing? And so they said, oh, here's a simple example for you. The Jewish family in Brooklyn that lives next to you there, they may take out $1 million of life insurance on the 2 oldest in the family. And in that family of 20, the 18 others make the payments on it. Who's ever taught us to do that? So 20 people in the family, they say we're going to take out $1 million of insurance on grandma and grandpa, and the 18 others are going to make the payments on it. And for them, it's not about profiting off the death of grandma and grandpa. It's about holding them up as the matriarch and the patriarch, right? Because what's going to happen from that $2 million? That's going to come in over possibly the next 10, 20 years. Grandma and grandpa are further along in life, right? Hopefully, if we take out a life insurance policy of significance, we'll have it for another 50, 60 years, right before our kids get it. But grandma and grandpa, maybe 10, 20 years. See, they're saying from that $2 million, we'll pay for all the grandchildren's college education. See, we're talking about student loan crisis. They're talking about all of the grandchildren will have college education paid for. See, from that $2 million, let's say we'll put down 20% on certain homes out there to help them get started. Where I live, we have those row houses. Remember in the Cosby Show, those brown row houses that you used to see there, brownstones that go on, right? Those are going for a couple million each. Most of us aren't going to save 20% down to buy a brownstone. But they're getting 20% down that kind of way. They can purchase a couple. And oh, by the way, the brownstones have multi-levels and you can have rental units. So the kids are coming out, right, without student loans. They've got rental income from the properties they live in, and they say, oh, we can also use that money to start our own business. So I can start up my own law firm, my own accounting firm. Do you see how they're setting themselves up differently in ways that we're not doing this? So I said, this is great. Me and my sister went to our parents and said, you know what, like the Jewish family in Brooklyn, we want to take out $1 million of insurance on y'all. You can imagine how well that went over, right? So here's the joke. I usually say, they put all the locks on the doors, they stop returning the calls. No, but seriously, it took us a long time to get there to say, you know what, for me to say, look, me and my sister do it okay for ourselves. It's not about us. We want to, like those other folks, set up your grandchildren, your great-grandchildren to know who you are and how you've set up and, contributed to their path in life. They said, we like that. Okay, then, so like that Jewish family, you pay for it. You'll just agree to it. So me and my sister took out a $500,000 policy. It's both of them are insured. Both have to pass before we get it. It's more cost effective, or it's cheaper to do it that way. But for a $500,000, it costs us $300 a month. I ask you what, and so me and my sister split it, $150 each. What else in America can you spend $150 to get a guaranteed $500,000 at some point in the future? That's tax-free. Thank you. So it's like a lottery ticket, right? I'll come back to that. But yes, tax-free, guaranteed, $500,000 at some point in the future. Let's keep going then. Last one. So what else are folks doing? So insuring your parents, insuring yourself, insuring your children. Now with a Gerber policy, right? For those who know, you could get something of significance. They told me, why don't you take out a $250,000 policy on your daughter? It costs me $142 a month. By the time she's 20 years old, ready to go to college, 18 years old, there's $20,000 built up in the cash value. Right? That's savings that builds up in it. By the time she's 25, there's 30. By the time she's 35, there's 60,000. If we never touch the cash value in the policy, there's $750,000 built up in the cash value by the time she's 65. I can pass on to her. So you're talking about the wings of financial freedom, right? You're talking about sort of setting them up to be better. In case her health changes, anything goes wrong, she has a policy of significance in place, right? So just keeping it going here. Okay, yes, so what I just described to you now is a $3.5 million generational focus. $500,000 on my parents, $2.5 million on me, and $250,000 on each of the children. Do you see how this goes? So what I'm talking about is just, we're going to earn that over time, or that's the value of who we are now. But it's not even incorporating the properties, the home, the investments, the 401k. This is just another tool, another income stream that the family can count on to help set us up in the future. You get where I'm going. Important in this, once you start structuring, and even for what you have now, We got to talk about the living will, healthcare, proxy, durable power of attorney. Shannon's going to talk to you about that later. Just bringing this to a close here. I'm saying this is a way to create the ability to leapfrog ahead in life. To create a lump sum infusion. You talk about the lottery tickets, right? So think about hitting the lottery every generation. Think about how different life would have been if you received $50,000 at some point. 100,000, 250, 500,000. That's what other communities are doing around us in ways that we're not doing the same. If whatever study you look at, the size of the wealth gap, one say 165,000, and another one says it's 600,000 between the average black family and the average white family. What if you had a policy for that size? Could you at least economically close the wealth gap for your family? We're talking about, their access, their opportunities, and all that. We can still fight for in life, but at least financially will you be on par and help move our children to the next level, right? Lower middle, upper middle class. Keep going. Please close a rising tide lifts all boats. So I want to talk to you real quick about that campaign that we put together. See, the campaign was 200,000 black people with $250,000 of life insurance will create $50 billion of tax-free future income, right? And so we did this, the individual part of this. Individually, $250,000 is going to be for protection, savings, wealth building, tax advantages. We even talk about the tax advantage of the life insurance. But think about when $50 billion gets paid out, this new income stream being cycled around the black-owned businesses here, right? Deposited into black banks, tithed into our churches, given for charitable giving, endowments for the HBCUs, the organizations, the institutions that we love. That's what other folks are doing, right? Just hit it a couple times. I'm proud to say from that $50 billion campaign, Lamar Boyce was the first to pay out $1 million check to the mother of a nurse who got a disease and passed within 2 years after she caught it. And she said, her daughter says, my mom is a nurse, and I want to become a doctor to honor her, and I know my schooling is paid for, my trajectory in life is already set up. She didn't say trajectory, but she said my life is set up because mom put it in place for me, right? It's happening. Guy Walker delivered $1 million to the wife of a tech company owner. Yeah, she stopped paying it when the price was a term policy. He kept it going. He didn't convert it. The price went up. He started to drop it. He stopped paying for 2 months. On the 59th day, he passed away. The company still agreed to pay it minus the 2 months premiums. She was able to keep the tech company going, figure out how she's going to sustain and pass it on for her children. Keep going. So where I'm going is this: $1 billion has been paid out on that $50 billion now, right? What was a vision became a mission, a movement. Now we've got these trees of growth actually happening. Why I'm excited to be here, why I'm more passionate now than ever, is because of what we just went through these last 2 years. It was COVID-19, according to ABM Research Lab, that said 142,000 black people passed away from April 2020 to April 2022 because of COVID. Well, these heartbreaking numbers, right? Think about how many families were set back because of that. But here's where I'm going. Had they been a part of that campaign with a $250,000 policy at least, 142,000 people with $250,000 of insurance would have created $35.6 billion for their families. Now, what can the families, friends, and businesses of 142,000 black people do with $35.6 billion? What I wanted to share was just the potential in this tool, right? Just raising our conversation, raising our thinking about how we can leverage this, how we can come together to put this in place to really make a difference for ourselves. If you want more. And how then we can leverage each other. So, to come together and work with the different entities out there and trying to create change. So I'm trying to lead a new campaign from the $50 billion now to $500 billion for the black life insurance agents around the country to put in force, $500 billion. If we work with the black realtors and the realtors, their goal is to put 2 million black folks in homes over the next 5 years. Right? Now we talk about down payments for homes from these policies, right? The black chambers, talking about the 1 million new jobs, starting 1 million new businesses, right? Estate planning attorneys, 1 million wills of trust to protect that. The banks, the new deposits. I'm just giving us another opportunity, right? Peering behind the curtain to see what we've been missing. I'm excited to share with you, this is the possibility and the movement that we've created and the path that we're on and the new destination that we have. I'm going to invite you to be a part of that with us. So I've got some agents around in the room here. I'm going to challenge you, if you don't already, if you'd like to speak to somebody about getting at least a $250,000 policy yourself, we'll be happy to help to talk to you about that, to create that financial stability, the economic opportunity, multi-generational wealth that I started with. I want you to consider your 3 generations, your parents, yourself, your children. You know, how do you come together? Have that conversation, that tough conversation. Talk about mom or dad, you know, can we talk about a policy and what that might look like? But we can start to, you know, open up that dialogue. Or to find out more about the career. There's not enough folks talking about this opportunity, bringing this message, this conversation, to be these agents of change for our community. And I'm gonna say, please get a copy of the book. I got 25 copies here. I think Melvin's got another 25 that he can share as well. So that's my presentation to you today. I'm just excited to help give you new direction.
Give it up for Mr. Eugene Mitchell, all the way from New York. And I had a couple people asking me already, did he bring books? Did he bring books? So you already got some people who want to get the book. And so we're super excited. That presentation was just awesome. I've been a financial professional for the last 15 years. I don't look young. But that information was amazing. And life insurance, so many of us, we discount what it can do for us. It's not just death insurance. Some of it has some living benefits as well as leaving that generational wealth. And so we're super excited about what was delivered today, but it can be delivered. But the word I have for you is let's take action. Because when we procrastinate year after year, we find ourselves going in circle and circle. And I heard Bishop Jamal Bryant talk about, you know, parents getting in line for their kids for getting this money for, to go to college. But the thing is, it does cost a lot. But you can use life insurance starting now, and it's cheap, to start building that wealth so your kids can go to college. And so that's what we're talking about when we talk about building generational wealth. You can use some of that money to buy a house, put down payments, so you don't have to find yourself in debt and have your hands out at these banks. We can be our own money manager. And so that was a phenomenal presentation. Again, I thank you, Mr. Eugene Mitchell, all the way from New York. Just awesome. And please get a copy of his book. We're going to move forward, and we have our workshops, which they coincide with what he was talking about. And so we have the life insurance, but if we don't have the education about an estate plan and how to actually distribute that money, then you can give the money off to your kids, and then the money is blown, right? And so we have a estate planning workshop with Miss Shannon back in the back, who's going to be talking to you guys for estate planning. So if you're going to be interested in going to that workshop, it is going to be, if you come back here, go around this first room over here, she'll be doing that workshop. The second workshop is going to be talking about how we can position our children for financial success. And I'll be leading that myself and sharing with you guys those ways and talking more about accounts that you can use for your children, the education. And so definitely, if you want to check out that workshop, it's going to be right over here. So you can come to the front and go through those doors, and we'll be in that room. And then if you want to stay in here, we're going to have a homeowner workshop led by Miss J, and she's going to go through homeownership. And you know what estate planning and the estate planning and the homeownership have? They all go together. And then this summer is not just for you, it's for the family. And so we have that workshop so you can go home not only feeding yourself, but also feeding your children. Yes, ma'am. So you're going to be able to attend 2 workshops, okay? So what we're going to do is attend your first workshop. After the second workshop, we're going to have lunch for you over here. So on your way to your second workshop, you will have like a lunch and learn type of deal, because we want to make sure you're fed, especially if you've been here since 8. We got food for you, but you're going to be able to attend 2 workshops, okay? And so we're going to go ahead and get moving. So again, if you want to stay in here for the home buyer workshop, stay here. If you want to go to how to position our children for financial success, right through those doors. And if you go around the first door to your right, your left, when we're getting confused, that one's going to be the estate planning room. And once that's over with yours, I will let you know when it's time to go to your second breakout. Somebody around. Okay. Yeah, they was. I didn't want to come up like $20. That's my computer, like penny.
Yes, sir. get some of this footage? So pretty much everything that was streamed live is going to be on our Facebook page and stuff like that. But I can share it with you.
Okay.
Plus, I got some pictures.
So you were the stream that was being streamed live.
Yeah, the first session he just did was being streamed. Yeah.
Okay.
And we're still streaming. Actually, I'm in transition to one of the breakout sessions.
Okay.
But yeah, I can share that with you after the fact.
I'll be talking with you.
What's that again?
Okay, I'll have to talk with you so we can work that in.
Definitely.
Okay, buddy.
And so within this whole movement, we talk to parents about how rent-free and payment-free for 40 years, and cousin Riri hasn't paid a bill in forever. And then, imagine life now. Somebody's real estate, right? What is happening? Everybody's like, the real estate market is going wild, and people are selling. Right? And now all of a sudden, great-great-grandma's house is sold for pennies on the dollar because she neglected the plan. All right? So it's all about the plan. So how do we do that? There are documents that everyone should have in place. All right? We'll talk about these people next. So there's documents that everyone needs to have in place. For those of you who grabbed the flyer, there are 3 main documents everyone needs. 3 main documents that everyone needs. The first one is a power of attorney. You're welcome. All right, and estate planning is not just for while once we pass away. It has a very, very important living component. All right, the living component deals with what happens if you become incapacitated or unable to manage your finances, your legal affairs, your personal affairs, your physical affairs, right? So the living component, the first living component deals with that. The second living component deals with healthcare. And I'll just be gruesome for a moment. You're walking across Peachtree and you get hit by a MARTA bus, and 6 months later you wake up in Grady Hospital. What kind of health care do you think you've been getting? Who's been making your health care decisions? Perhaps, right? But if you don't have a document in place that says, this is the person that can speak for me medically, if I can't speak for myself, you may not be getting any health care. Okay? Or, worse, somebody who you wouldn't want making your health care decisions is in there speaking for you. Right. You're not one of those that wants that, then you should have the documents in place. So again, the first document is grab a flyer there and have a seat.
But does a durable corporate training cover healthcare as well?
Nope. So the first document we need to have in place is the power of attorney. That covers finances and legal issues.
Okay.
The power of attorney is only effective while you are living. It expires when you pass away. All right. This is the document when you name someone to speak for you financially, to speak for you legally, if you cannot speak for yourself. And I say cannot, but with the power of attorney, it also applies to if you're unwilling, right? I had a client who woke up one morning and said, I just don't feel like managing the bills anymore. What do I do? Well, she had a power of attorney in place. Her power of attorney can pick up and do all of it for her. All right. So again, the power of attorney says, if something happens to me and I either cannot or don't wish to manage my finances and legal issues, this is who does so for me. Okay. I had another client who got a traffic ticket, and then she went on 3 cruises. Went to 3. She was gone for about a month and a half. And in her age demographic, she didn't do online banking. She didn't do online bill pay. Like, she still went to the blue box and put her bills in, or she went to Georgia. Like, she paid her Georgia Power bill at Georgia Power. So when she left, she was really concerned that nothing was going to get taken care of. Well, she had power of attorney. Her power of attorney was able to go to traffic court while she was in the middle of the Caribbean and manage that. Okay. So again, the power of attorney is the first document everyone needs. And when I say everyone, this is everyone from the time they turn 18. 18 is the age when you become a legal adult, right? Mom, dad, guardian, whomever can no longer make decisions for you unless you give them permission to do so. What is that permission? It's the power of attorney. Okay. The second document everyone should have in place is a healthcare document. All right. The healthcare document is 4 parts. The first part is when you name a healthcare proxy or an agent. This is the person that makes your healthcare decisions for you if you are unable to speak for yourself. Contrary to the power of attorney, on this one, you have to be unable to speak for yourself. All right. If you can speak for yourself, then you will. All right. So the first part is when you name that proxy. Who should that be? Any ideas?
Your decision.
It's your decision. Okay, but give me some examples of who you would choose.
Your spouse.
Spouse, children, parents, friends, family, right? Colleagues. Is it a requirement that if you're married, your spouse has to be your healthcare agent?
No.
No.
Lucky.
No, and there's 2 reasons on that. One, healthcare providers don't know if there's trouble in paradise. So you may not want your spouse being your healthcare person in that situation. The second part, sometimes our spouses are too sensitive. And so if your spouse is that sensitive soul, I'll just use myself as an example. I want to do not resuscitate after 2 weeks. If they have to look to my spouse, he would be able to do it because he can separate the emotion from the decision-making process. My sons, on the other hand, one of them is way, way, way sensitive. Grab a flyer and come on in, ladies, and stay. One of them is way, way, very sensitive. So if they have to look to them, he would say, listen, I can't do it. I would never name him as my healthcare proxy because he can't separate the emotion from the decision-making process. All right? It should be someone, and you name a person and a backup on all of these. All right? That can separate the emotion from the decision. The second part is where you give that proxy that you need instructions. All right, this part is called an advance directive. Some people call it a living will. All right, this is the part of the document where you say things like, I want to do not resuscitate. Or, no matter what, don't put me on a ventilator. That's become really hot with COVID, right? Or, no blood transfusions for me. Or whatever your choices would be, if you have advanced dementia or Alzheimer's, how would you want to be treated? Okay, all of those things come into play in the advance directive. All right. The third part is a HIPAA waiver. I'm sure everyone in here has visited a doctor in the last 20 years, and you check the box saying you got their HIPAA policies. Right? Does everyone know what you check the box saying? No? But you check the box so you can get seen, right? We all do that. I do the same thing. Right? What you were checking was saying, yes, you can leave an email or a phone message at the number I gave you. It's safe. I trust whoever checks that email. In the estate planning section, though, that's expanding. So you're saying these people that I'm listing on here can have access to my medical information, but they are not necessarily speaking for me. So for instance, that sensitive soul in your life that you didn't name as your healthcare proxy, but you still want them involved, put them on the HIPAA waiver. Or a primary care physician, or a specialist, or I have people who say, oh, I have 7 siblings and we're all very close. I'm going to put them all on there. That's fine. Okay. Sometimes their reasoning is different from, for instance, from a spouse. I have one client who, bless their hearts, she has 7 siblings and she said we all talk every day. We're very involved in one another's lives. Can I put all of them on there? Yes, absolutely. Put all of them on there. And her spouse said, thank God we put all of them on there, because if something happens to her, my focus is going to be on her, not fielding phone calls from all of her siblings all day. Okay, so put whoever you want on the list. Then the fourth part of the healthcare is the end of life or transition instructions. All right, how many of you have some idea in your head of whether you want to be buried or cremated? Okay, those of you with your hands raised, how many of you know that that's going to cause some dissension among your family members? Mm-hmm. Okay, so how do you eliminate that? Put it in writing. All right. Believe me, you all have ideas. It's kind of like, I think about a puzzle, right? So estate planning is like your opportunity to put your puzzle together. The puzzle comes in a box with 5 different pieces, and it's got a picture on the outside. You know what you want your picture to look like. But unless you have it in writing, no one else will know. And nobody else will know what pieces need to be in that box in order to make that picture come to life. All right, so again, the first thing is the power of attorney. The second thing that everyone needs is a healthcare document. The third is a will. Last will and testament is a legal word for it. Your will is your opportunity to say publicly, this is what all I have, and this is what I want to happen with everything I have. Why do I say publicly? Because once it is filed with the probate court upon passing, there's not a requirement, contrary to TV and movies, that there be a reading of the will. Right? They do that for our viewing pleasure and for ratings. Anyone in here watch Queen Sugar? Okay, but every single episode has something to do with estate planning. Okay, but unless you put it in writing, it's not going to be carried out. Right, so again, the will is your opportunity to say, this is what I have, this is what I want to happen with everything. All right, now, somebody said something about trust. So, the power of attorney, the healthcare, and the will are the 3 main documents everyone should have. Everyone. Okay, there's a fourth one, a fourth tool that we often use for certain categories of people, and I'll tell you all what the categories are I use. The first is the 3-part category. Is anyone who has minor children, anyone who has a blended family scenario, and in today's society, blended families are more traditional than traditional families, let's face it, right? And then anyone who has an interest in leaving a legacy. That's most people, right? The second category that I always recommend a trust for is business owners. Whether that business is profitable or not, business owners need to have a trust in place. Because then you're saying, this is what happens with the business upon my passing. I'm leaving it to my children, or I want it to be sold, or I want my business partner to take over. Whatever your succession plan is, that's where we house that information. All right. The third category of people that I always recommend a trust for is anyone who owns real property, and real property is your land, your houses. All right. Real property, whether it has a mortgage on it or not. Okay? Doesn't matter if it has a mortgage on it. Then you should have a trust. And the fourth is, quite frankly, anyone who has more than 3 pennies to their name stuck in the cup holder of the vehicle parked in the garage or in the driveway with the cover over. Okay? Why? Because that means you have assets that you want to protect. All right? My grandfather had 3 granddaughters. And he always said, I don't care if I only die with 3 pennies. I want each of you to get a penny. Okay? I'll buy it to make sure that's in writing. Right? But that's the reality of it. So the trust is the tool that many people use and can and should use to protect their assets, to create that generational wealth that Eugene was talking about. All right, I have a dear friend whose grandmother purchased a life insurance policy, much like I was talking about.
right? Only her policy was for $20,000. She had a $20,000 life insurance policy. She said in her documents, in her estate plan, first thing is you take $10,000 to bury me. And she had 10 grandchildren. $10,000 to bury me, and each of my grandchildren get $1,000. Wow. 9 of those grandchildren took their $1,000, and it was pretty much gone in 2 weeks. Okay, my friend took her $1,000. She invested it in her business, and now she's a millionaire. Wow. Off of grandma. Who do you think those other cousins of hers always call when they want something? Her. And what do you think she says to them? Yes, basically she says no. Grandma put every single one of us in the same position. She gave all of us the same opportunity. You squandered yours, that's not my fault. Okay, so having a trust in place is a way to dictate behavior. It's a way to create wealth, right? And you do it outside of the will. All right, so if you have a trust, your trust is where you put all of that stuff. The shoes, the clothes, the handbags, the artwork, the firearms, the furniture, the vehicles, the real property, the business, all of those things go under the umbrella of the trust. And your will simply says, I leave everything in my trust. That way, all of those nosy neighbors and cousins and Visa, MasterCard, American Express, whoever thinks they're going to get a copy of your will after you pass away. And anyone can get a copy of it, by the way. They don't have to be related. No strings attached. If they want to go to the Clayton County Probate Court or DeKalb County Probate Court or wherever and pay probably $2.50 page now for a copy of it, they can get it. And do they? Yes. And how does Visa, MasterCard, American Express, and other people know this? Because they have people on their staff. It's their job to cross-reference the obituaries with people who look. Unfortunately, it goes something like this. What's your name? Micheline? Okay. Hi, Miss Micheline. My name is Shannon. I'm from Visa. And you're listed as the next of kin for your cousin, Sarah. And Sarah owed us $2,000. And since you're listed as the next of kin and we see that she passed away, you now owe us that $2,000. Okay, y'all can't see her face. But her face, you did have the same face. Her face says it all. And people like Micheline, who don't know any better, who haven't been educated, who don't know, will be doing everything that they can to pay that $2,000 debt. However, Visa or whoever called did so, they're preying on you. I call them predators. Why? They're preying on your grief. They're preying on your lack of knowledge and information. Micheline is not responsible for that debt unless Micheline was a co-signer on that debt. Otherwise, that debt basically died with Sarah. Did I say Sarah? Was Sarah the sister? I don't know, right? Okay. But that debt dies with her. There are certain debts that do die with me. There are certain debts that do not. I'll tell you on one right offhand. That does not. Another one is child support. Child support does not die with people. Okay? Think about it this way. Think about it logically. Most people say, well, why not? Well, because what is child support? It is to support that child until they reach the age of majority. And if you die and you have a child support obligation on you for a child who's 3, and you die when you're 5, where are those other 15 years of, is that right? Yeah. 15 years of support going to come from? Okay, so the court, the probate court, can go after that estate for that child support obligation. So that's another debt that does not die. Okay? So, yes?
The estate equates to next of kin.
No, estate are not the next of kin. Not the next of kin. Individuals are not personally responsible for the debts of a person who passes away. The estate will be, and it depends on who is named as the administrator on the estate itself. Sometimes it is the next of kin that's named as the administrator or executor if there's two different things.
What was the question?
She said, doesn't that debt go to the next of kin? No, that was the example I just gave.
I guess my concern is out of caring for parents.
Uh-huh.
And then I got some information about long-term care and the lack thereof. And the state paying, when they pay for hospice and they pay for skilled nursing.
Yeah, so are you talking about Medicaid?
Yes.
That's
Like, do
that's
they-
different.
They go after.
They go after the estate, but not the individual family members. They can, and we could be in here till dark talking about that. Well, it's gonna be darker. We could be in here till dark talking about Medicaid and that whole scheme. All right. If you put it in a certain type of trust, those assets are protected. There are different types of trusts. All right, a revocable trust is still connected to your name, your social. You can move things out of it, sell things into it. You can do anything with it. You can manage it just like you manage all of your assets now. All right. Again, it's connected to your name, your social. And irrevocable, on the other hand, gets its own EIN number. It's a standalone entity. All right, and that's the type of trust that you put assets in that you owe nothing on. So, great grandma's house that has no mortgage, right? It can go in an irrevocable trust, right? The business that has no liens attached to it, nothing external, no accounts associated with anything else, that can go in an irrevocable trust. People often make a life insurance policy, they name the trust as the beneficiary. That's fine too. That doesn't matter if it's revocable or irrevocable. There's not any asset that you can have that can go in a irrevocable trust that can't go in a revocable, but it doesn't work the other way around. Okay? And again, we can go all deep into the weeds on that. Yes.
You said the business that does not have any liens attached, so if it's encumbered, you can't put it in a trust?
You can't put it in an irrevocable trust. If it's encumbered, it can go in a revocable, but you have to let the lien holder know.
Oh.
Okay, but if it's encumbered, it cannot go in an irrevocable trust.
Can the lien holder object, or they just need notice?
In some situations, they can't object, but they need notice because the trust you're putting in place for beneficiaries. So it depends. I'm an attorney, and a lot of my answers are going to be it depends. Right? They are.
One further question on that, the advantages between like the revocable versus the irrevocable. I understand that the irrevocable can't be pierced, right? It
Can or can't?
cannot.
Cannot. It can be, but it takes a lot.
Okay.
You have to.
What is the advantage of doing a revocable trust to an average person who doesn't make millions of dollars?
There's nothing but advantage. There's nothing but advantage. Don't get wrapped up in thinking you have to have wealth like these people to have a trust. These are people, everyone up here failed or neglected to plan. All of them. Y'all know who this is? John Singleton. Okay, I'm going to go back to what I was talking about with the healthcare directive. John Singleton had a stroke on a Thursday morning. All right, he was relatively young. His mother, he was up in New York, Eugene might have mentioned this. Mother went to the hospital, said, okay, what do I do? They said, are you his healthcare proxy? She said, no. Oh, well, you need to go become his guardian to make decisions. She said, okay, how do I do that? You have to go down to the probate court and file a petition. Okay, she goes down there, she files an emergency petition. They say, okay, we'll hear your case next Thursday. That was an emergency petition. He passed away that night because he didn't have his health care document in place and didn't have anyone to speak for him medically. Okay, Aretha Franklin. I'm just going to walk through these. Aretha Franklin. They said she died without a will, and Aretha Franklin had 4 adult sons, 2 of whom who have special needs and will need care and compensation forever. All right. About a year after her passing, they found not one, not two, but 3 handwritten wills. 3. Okay, one of them was in a spiral notebook in a cushion in the couch. Okay, what's the problem with that? The problem is now they had to go back and authenticate that those were actually her wills. They had to stall everything because Michigan had appointed somebody to be the administrator over her estate. They had already started distributing things. They had to go and make sure that there was nothing in those 3 handwritten wills that contradicted. Okay, people always say, can we have a handwritten will here in Georgia? Yes, you can, but it still has to follow certain guidelines, like it has to have witnesses, it has to have signatures, it should probably be notarized, like all of these guidelines go into place. So I caution people on that. Kobe had a fantastic estate plan. Okay, his estate plan included the power of attorney, the healthcare document, the will, and a trust. Okay, their trust was beautifully written, and it was designed in such a way that Vanessa or whoever could make changes to it. And that's exactly what happened. After Kobe died, Vanessa went to the probate court and she said, can I amend our trust because our youngest daughter wasn't specifically named by name? The court looks at the document and says, absolutely you can, you're the trustee. Okay, how do y'all think that some of his contracts and things are still going? Like, what, a year and a half now almost, after he passed away? Because they were, those businesses, those entities were under the umbrella of the trust, and as the co-trustee, Vanessa is able to continue forward with the business. Okay. Michael Jackson's estate got basically just wrapped up about a year ago. Why? Because of proceeds and assets and taxes and everything else. All right. His plan, and it was a little while after he passed away by the time they found his will, but his plan came down to the valuation of his estate. All right. And it came down to the, remember he had bought the Beatles catalog? All right. And so when they were probating his estate, they were like, well, how much is his estate actually worth? And, you know, he was, I'm sure everyone has heard about how he was in debt out of his years, and that's why he was selling Neverland and all of that, right? Well, all of that became important. Why? Because the IRS said, we think his estate is worth this much. The family, the administrator says, no, his estate is really worth this much. Okay? 12 years later, no, more than that. He died in 2009. So just last year was when they finally resolved all this. They said, okay, his estate's really worth this much. What do you think that's about? Money. The IRS wants their cut. Okay. A.J. Johnson, he died about a year ago now. And I don't know if y'all remember, he made all of his wealth in the Friday franchise. And he died without a will and without life insurance. And I don't know if y'all remember, but it was all over the news that his wife was calling out all the celebrity types and saying, shame on y'all for not helping him, and shame on y'all for not setting him up for success. And now I'm going to be broke, busted, and destitute, and everything else. And then what that did was basically shame everybody. And a GoFundMe fund was launched. So, I said, she didn't take it. No, she didn't, right? However, you know, maybe if he had instituted something like this at any point, they would have had the information. Nipsey Hussle, he had his estate wrapped up in life insurance. He did not have a will. Wrapped up in life insurance. Fantastic, beautiful. However, the beneficiaries on those life insurance policies, unfortunately, were his minor children. Minor children cannot get the money. Okay? And his minor children did not all have the same mama. So Lauren London was one of the two of the minor children's mothers, and then the other ones. So what do you think happened? Other baby mama is now upset because her children are going to get their part because she steps in as their guardian. she went through the proper channels, right? The other one didn't know what to do. Nobody had educated her. Okay? So those funds will sit there. Right? The lesson learned from that, never ever name a minor child as beneficiary on a life insurance policy. Okay, you name an individual, or better yet, you make the trust the beneficiary. And then you say in the trust, these funds go here. $10,000 pays for my funeral. Let's just say you have $1 million policy. You say $20,000 pays for my funeral. This much here pays off any remaining mortgage I have on that house. And then so-and-so gets the house. And they can turn it into a rental property. And the income from that rent can send my great-great-grandchildren to college. Voila! What have you just done? You've created generational wealth and you've set people up for success for generations to come.
Right up all this what you're saying.
How did you know? All right, James Brown. His went on forever and ever. Period. And then Chadwick Boseman, Black Panther, died without a will. The unfortunate thing about that was he was in his heyday on the Black Panther or the Marvel MCU, and he was a newlywed. And he knew he had cancer. 4 years. 4 years. Huh? His wife was pregnant. Oh, I don't know. She was. I did not know that. Okay, newlywed. So the probate laws are very black and white, right? So if you are, and I'm going to close my eyes. Imagine I don't see all of you sitting here. If you're one of those people that has that play cousin in your family that you want to bless with something when you die, or you're one of those people that has that actual cousin that you know never ever does anything and will never do right, make sure you got it in writing. Okay? Because the laws are solid. He might have had some long-term insurance, the life insurance, it depends on when you put it in place, right? And so, which side of this planning do you want to be on? Do you want to be on the side with all those people, celebrity types that I just named? Or do you want to be on the side where you plan and you react accordingly and you give your loved ones the ability to grieve without having to worry about the business of death, right? Death can be extremely concerning. People all handle grief in different scenarios, and people all have different family dynamics, right? You know that cousin that don't ever do right. You know that sibling who's always talking about money and doesn't have a heart, right? You know that cousin who always shows up with the Tupperware at the family gatherings but never prepares even a drink, right? We all have different family dynamics. And that same cousin and that same sister and that same other person, once somebody passes away, do they change? No. Sometimes it gets worse. But sometimes we always say, well, I have 4 children and I'm going to treat all of them just alike. They all know. But Johnny is one of those children. I'm sorry if anyone's named Johnny. Right? Johnny is one of those children who has been eating at his inheritance his whole life. And you've been taking care of him forever. He knows it. And so do all the other kids. Right? So when you treat them all exactly the same when you pass away, how fair do they think that's going to be? All right? People don't change in emergency situations. People don't change in death. Right? So you have an opportunity while you're living, while you are of sound mind. While you are of sound mind. While you are of sound mind to do what you want, to put it in place. Okay? Put it in writing. Right? The only way to do that is to put it in writing. All right? So, raise your hand if you can relate personally to any of the celebrity families I talked about. You know someone who became incapacitated and didn't have their affairs in order. Okay. You know someone who passed away without life insurance. You know someone who passed away without a will. You know a family that used a GoFundMe to bury a loved one. We all do, right? Do you want to be in that situation? Okay. So how do we do that? Break the cycle, right? You break the cycle. How do we do that? You put your plan in order. Here's my information. It's also on these flyers. Everyone that is in here, to answer your question, everyone that's in here is entitled to a complimentary, translation free, consultation with me. Okay, contact me, let me know that you were here at the Atlanta Black Chambers Family Financial Empowerment Summit, and we'll set you up with a complimentary consultation. Okay, in that consultation, it is educational. It is also an opportunity for me to get to know you personally, know your family. Like I just said, everyone's dynamics are different. So no two plans are the same. Okay? So allow me to give you the opportunity to get that information. Any questions? Yes.
I'm sorry. So I just have concern about being a long-term caregiver for my mom, who is on Medicaid, who has utilized skilled nursing services for a significant period of time. We were in hospice at once. Thank God we were able to come out of hospice and she did get better down the line. But my concern is trying to get myself ready for what eventually is going to happen. Mm-hmm. As I am the power of attorney, across all of her stuff, I'm worried that she doesn't have any accumulation of wealth at the moment. She has not worked for all of my adult life. So my concern is that the state is going to come after me to recoup those.
Does she have a will?
Yes, we do.
Okay.
I've done that, the health directive, I have all that.
So that's all you can do. And is she of sound mind still?
She is.
So if she is still of sound mind, she can structure her plan accordingly so that you don't have to worry about all of that. If she is no longer of sound mind, then you are, I hate to use the word stuck, but you're left with wherever she left you, right? Because once a person is no longer of sound mind, they cannot legally put any of these documents in place. The power of attorney that you have is going to expire when she passes away, right? That stops. No one can speak for anyone once they pass away under a power of attorney. That power, that authority ceases at that point. So if she is still of sound mind and she wants to adjust some of her assets and distribute them accordingly, she can still do that. You can't do that for her. All of these things that I'm talking about, you have to give that. You can't take that permission from anyone. So it's access that has to be given, not taken. Okay?
Shannon?
Yes.
So, a couple of instructions.
Okay.
The box lunch is right outside the door to your right, to your left when you walk out. So grab that. And the other two sessions, home buying is in the main area where we were earlier. And right next door is shielding your position of your children for financial success. So those are the other two sessions. So we ask that you select one of those. Grab lunch first. So we do have to wrap the planning attorney, Shannon Wilson. It's amazing. So hopefully you all will schedule some time with her.
Thank you.
Please grab lunch.
Like if you send me an email, I'll send you a calendar stuff. So you can schedule it. There is not a place in my calendar that I reserve certain times. Like I'll have certain times for this week. Right? If there's not one that fits, just call me or send me a
Like I walk through all of that. Okay. When we do the competition. So it depends on who you do. I mean, a trust or not. I do a base plan, includes the 3 main documents I talked about, and then if you know you can trust everyone does. And so if you need to do it, then it's just Are you a child? No. Your siblings talked about this? Absolutely. And you said parents, so mom is, how is she?
She's good, but she doesn't know anything financial. That doesn't.
Okay, so yes, perhaps. He does need the first 3. The trust would depend on the assets that he has and whether or not it would benefit to those interests. But you should definitely get any of that done before his dementia gets worse.
It's not that much. I can do something to see if it's real, but I'm seeing signs. Others want it because I'm like, when he has money, he can't his bill, and it's going to be a problem. So, having it as possible together, would that come from?
Well, maybe. So if they own everything jointly, and that's how they have to set it up, then it might not benefit them. But if there are assets that need to pass outside of that, they're thinking about that. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Good.
It doesn't matter.
No, and I tell people all the time, like,
House.
no, everyone should have it, whether you're married or not, especially that, because this, you're not married and you don't have children, I got you a life insurance.
Thank you.
So that makes it even more important to have it. You're welcome.
Just a suggestion, and I wanted to get this to you too. Put your QRC code with your, so that when people sit back, you just
Can see it.
you get direct to your site or whichever you decide. Like just down the contact information or your site information. Your QRC code will go a long way.
I have my info on the last
You
slide.
know, you had it on
Oh,
there. What
okay.
I'm saying is a QR code. A QR code is much easier for people than just snap a picture and it'll take you right to your
Yeah, okay.
information.
No, I appreciate that.
Yeah, I mean, you know, if you reach, some people don't have the patience to wait in line to talk to you. And they won't even take the time to like, okay, what was the phone number? They missed it, they got distracted, but that picture, right, take them right to that.
Thank you.
Thank you, great.
Thank you. Hope I answered your questions.
Good.
Okay.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Randall Manger. I'm actually a lawyer also.
Okay.
I have quite a bit of money I gotta invest in this account. So if you got anybody you gotta say, check out some.
Okay, please do that. Often my probate clients do need to sell, but
Okay. If you got one right now, that makes sure you get paid too.
Well, you know how that goes with us. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. What type of law do you do?
I do primarily civil litigation, social injury. I do some business transactions and I do trust.
Okay.
So I'm a proponent that, yeah, business is I'm doing trust and I'm doing a lot of trust now. In fact, I'm trying to get into the complex trust now. So I was surprised. Somebody told me that Bill Gates bought a $46 million house and put in it. No taxes. No, it's just.
That's how they do it. We
No,
look, we can't
no
even
taxes.
think about anything.
No taxes.
And that's how they can do it in this
Yeah,
generation
and this is crazy.
without even thinking
I've
about
had
it.
several times in my life that I've had to pay so much more tax than I thought I ever paid in my whole life. And so now,
And they house it without it, like it's not even, I was here
Right.
second nature for them.
it's nothing.
That's how I set it up.
Nothing.
Yeah.
So, but
Appreciate it. You got power.
Randall Langham, I'm going to, oh, it's charging. It's charging. I got, because I got the little QR code and I got the little
Okay.
stuff. But I'm going to send it. I'm going to, if this, can I send it to
Yeah. My info
this
is
number
in
on the, right here? Will that receive an email
It will.
or text
here.
message?
It will. It will. Thanks, Randall.
Love it. Love it.
Right. I think I'm gonna, I thought that I was gonna miss, so I was gonna
Hey, City, did
skip
you have
it.
one?
Yes.
I already got one.
My big city, but down on this.
Okay.
Thank you.
You remember Gate City too, and National Water Association.
I am.
I pushed that.
I am.
pushed that. We need that.
I am.
We need that. We need that wisdom.
Did you go to the conference in
I did.
Memphis?
Memphis. I did.
I
It's
did
good.
go.
It was very good.
I know. I
Picked
heard.
up something up there, but I didn't like what I picked up there, but you know, everything else was good.
Oh, my goodness.
I did.
Look, I'm like, I don't know about that.
Yeah, no, I got ill. I got
That's
ill.
what I thought.
Yeah, a lot of people did,
I got ill.
and which was really interesting.
Yeah.
All right.
But
Thank
the
you.
good thing is I survived.
Right.
Don't want that again.
Okay, you good?
You're gonna start in a little bit? All right. This is like your food. I'm
Like, I want my salad, but how am I gonna? My business cards and stuff.
I'm sorry, excuse me.
How you doing? What's good, brother?
I don't count that as full size. So that's the counter. Every year someone has off the counter on their purchase and sell equipment. And that's when so we may go back and forth, negotiate to come to an agreement and then accept it, the things that the seller accepts, we can offer them to the first time. So when you're offering accepted, like I said, talk about earnest money. So 3 days of going under contract, you as the buyer have to put up your earnest money. Your due diligence period will start. So the due diligence period is the time period, let's just say it's 7 days. That's the time that you have time to get your home inspection done, termite inspection done, think about it, pray about it, ask your mom if this is the right decision for you. Because it's the only time under time while you're under contract that you can terminate for whatever reason and your earnest money is protected, right? So if you terminate on day, your due diligence period is 7 days, and you terminate on day 7, you terminate just because you woke up and decided to do it before, you get your earnest money back and you can go into another property. However, if you terminate on day 8, you terminate, but your earnest money is not going to go to the 7. So that is what the due diligence period is. It's very important to make sure that you can deadline the agent that is not allowed to make sure that you as a buyer know that when deadlines are, just to make sure that I'm always protecting your earnest money at all times. We want to set up after your home inspection. The home inspection, like I said, it's all about the home inspector telling you, the condition of the property. If it is an issue with the home inspection, you go back to the seller. The inspection report, must be X, Y, and Z. They can say, yes, I'll give you things. They can say, I'll give you money and do a repair to go towards your closing costs for the repair. Or they can say, I'm going to do a big thing, right? I never like to negotiate a reduction of price when it comes to repairs because $5,000 in reduction is not going to affect your mortgage payment drastically. It may like move it by like $10. So I like to be able to get the repairs done by the seller so that when you move in, you don't have to worry about doing the inspection or they give you money to move the repair. And then they decide they don't want to do anything and you can't come to the agreement as part of your repair. You as a buyer, you decide that you're okay with moving forward and pay for those repairs when you got to buy the house, or you can terminate it and you can move to the next property. We talk about the home. So when it comes to inspections, you don't want to look at like chip paint, broken lines. You want to look at things that are going to cause health issues, safety issues, or things that are going to cause big bugs. Like I said, the home inspection gives you peace of mind because you're going into a property knowing exactly what's going into it. Like I said, foundation issues, mold issues, roof issues, major system issues. Those are the things that we're looking for in an inspection report. Next slide. Next slide. Next slide. Also, to buying a home, the lender requires you to have homeowners insurance. Like I said, it's part of that, your mortgage payment every month, your homeowners insurance. So you cannot buy a house without having homeowners insurance. What home insurance does, basically, if your house burned down, and you had a major leak, or something major like that destroyed the property, that's what your homeowners insurance covers. So closing day. So once we get you pre-approved, on the property, get the offer accepted, get the home inspected, get the value of the home, now it's time for closing day. So closing day, so I just like this. So when it comes to closing on the property, all the documents that consist of the closing packet is the first stack is going to be all the lending documents. So you're going to already have all these documents throughout the process with your lender. The second has like 60 pages of documents that they want you to know if you don't take a mortgage, Georgia will foreclose on your house. So the documents in the closing packet, you as a buyer, you cannot change anything, you can't erase anything, you can't X anything out. Every buyer that buys a home in Georgia, the documents are the same. The only thing that's different is the buyer's name, the seller's name, the property address. So if you don't want to buy a home because you don't like what something said in the document, you can't close on the home. Yeah, closing it about, if you do any inspections, I always like to do a re-inspection because I'm not a contractor, I'm not an inspector, so if I can't tell you to do this done correctly, I'm going to get the receipt from the seller, but I always recommend that buyers pay that $150 re-inspection fee to make sure that the inspectors can come out to make sure that any repairs are by the seller done correctly. Before closing, we do a final walkthrough just to make sure that the property is, in the same condition that it was when we put in the contract. The attorney will provide proof of close, letting us know that we've got clean title insurance, and all your documents from your lender has been included. Like I said, I'm sorry, I'm trying to go fast and not enough time, but this is pretty, I know it's a lot of information, but this is pretty much the gist of the home buying process. Like I said, I do this home buying seminar monthly, so I have your information. I can more in depth. So I have my home inspector, my lender, my homeowner's insurance agent, and my closing attorney to go over that with the process. So, any questions?
So for those of you who need to attend another breakout session, estate planning, position children for success, get lunch before you do that. Lunch is walk around your seat, take lunch before you, and those two breakout sessions are there. And if you want to do continue with Jay, she's got this room for 2 o'clock. You definitely have a panel. The panel is in here. So make your decision. Estate planning is right there. Positioning children for financial success is right back here. Lunch is back here.
I met you I met you in 2013. That's when I first met you.
So that was a bit with Cuba.
Yeah,
That was a really old one.
I'm the one that mentioned Bill Automotive to you guys. I see you. I'm talking to you. Yeah. I couldn't make it to them, but yeah. Good to see you too, man. July 13th. That's my birthday. I'm glad you guys finally came over there. In the morning.
Hey, I'm giving you lunch.
Oh, Keela, okay, yes. You didn't email me back. Yes, yes. Okay. That's how I met you. I'm seeing you. I ain't been here. But yeah, I'm like,